Bishop.
And I'm Dr. Steph.
And listen, we thank God for you tuning into this YouTube channel right here. We call it Our Life, Our Journey,
Our Truth.
And we're so glad to have you connected on today. Let me tell you, I want to make sure you follow this woman right here, Dr. Steph Walker. Follow me at Joseph Walker 3. Make sure you go to our website and josephwalker3.org, get all the content and things like that. And make sure you like, comment,
and subscribe.
Please subscribe, because we want to make sure we stay connected to you, because that means everything to us as we continue to curate this content for your life. Let me tell you, now listen, the conversation got so good last week, we just thought to come back with part 2, right? Because this is such an important area, emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And we're talking about it. And the
it
reason
can transform your life, or it can make or break your life.
I think the thing that has really, I think compelled us to really spend this much time, even in this part 2 on this, is because I think so many of you don't realize every single day the scenarios of how this plays out, and how it could either open or close doors for you, how it can, opportunities can happen when you tap into it. And so, you know, what we want to do is give some real life examples of that and show you moments in our own lives. Be very transparent by times in which we experienced it and how it played out in our life.
And maybe I'll start. Like, I would say, you know, as I reflect, like, why is my emotional intelligence so high? I think it's because of my profession, you know? So as, you know, a neonatologist, pediatrician, frequently I found myself, you know, obviously in the hospital or clinic setting where you're working with, you know, young families or families in general with young children, infants or what have you. And many of these children are nonverbal or not able to communicate sort of what they're feeling or what their needs are. And the nuances of being able to pick up on the subtleties of how a child winces or how a child looks at you, or, you know, whether a child looks sick, or, you know, the concern in a parent's voice, you know, based on what they're saying. It may be something that's very benign, but how hurried they're speaking, or the look on their face, or the worry in their eyes, or, you know, the tears that are welling up as they're telling their story. Being able to pick up on all those nuances can potentially save a life. And so being able to be in those settings and understand that it's not always about what's said, but frankly, it's about what's not said. It's about the body language. It's about what's going on in their eyes. It's about their breathing pattern. It's about all of those things in that immediate setting, and just truly being observant. And honestly, I feel like it's an art. Like emotional intelligence, when you are sort of honing in on that, is truly like almost like a communicative dance, almost, I would say.
I would agree. I would agree. And I think the same thing is, you know, happens in my leadership and what I do as a pastor. I think when people come in, particularly when they're in crisis situations and something has occurred, you are watching body language, you are watching, you know, where their emotions are taking them. You're listening to what they're not saying. You know, the obvious is right here before them. This event has occurred, how they're processing your presence, your presence versus what they perceive to be the absence of God, to allow something to happen. They're trying to reconcile that. And sometimes I've learned that presence is more important than words in moments like that. Sometimes people don't need you to say anything, but just be present
and listen.
And so I think that communicative dance is an important part of EQ because you don't want to say something that could trigger, you know, some negative response. I've talked to leaders all the time. I say somebody lost a child, lost a mother, and you walk in, the first thing you say, well, God needed a flower in his garden. And that's
not what you need to say. They don't need to hear that.
No, just be quiet and be present and understand they're angry, they're going through the stage of grief, they're sometimes in denial of a variety of things, and sometimes just being present matters. And I think that it's just important. And I think sometimes what we have to be aware of is that what these moments create in us. Like, for example, I'll give you a perfect example of this one. And it helps you understand Dr. Steph. Many of you may not. I live with her every day. I've been married to her almost
Uh-oh.
15
Let's see
years.
what he's going to
But
say.
it's real.
All
Like, for
right.
example,
Yeah.
like in her world of neonatology, intensive care for babies, that her decisions
Oh, yeah.
are rooted in life and death.
Yes.
So when she was training residents and she was training all these folks around her, she had a certain cadence. She had a certain way of speaking to them. That's no, it's not
Like
personal.
when
It's
seconds
life
matter.
and
Yeah.
death. It's
Yeah.
that. So her mind processes acute moments that way. This, that. Now, it's hard sometimes for her to turn that off, right? Because even with us, the family, sometimes when there's something needs to be done, we can see that side of her come out.
Yeah.
This, that, let's
Yeah.
go. And we're like, whoa, we feel like attendees.
Slow down, slow down.
We feel like we're not, no,
Yeah.
wait a minute. But in her, that's how to understand what she has been accustomed to in her training.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that allows us to have greater EQ to know where it's coming from, right? Whereas, she could look at me and say, he's a pastor, so of course, what he does, he's always going to give the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes there's a lot of naivety in that. Sometimes I could be incredibly naive about a person's intentions because I'm always looking for opportunities to see the good in everybody, where she's like, hey, crazy. At the end of the day. So, but it
And he gets
allows, and
burned.
sometimes I get burned a
Yeah.
lot because of that. And so we counterbalance each other. Where I may tell her, that you've been too abrasive, don't be that hard, just give it a chance. And she may
Right.
tell me, you're being too naive, you got to have greater boundaries, you got to, and so I think what happens.
Because the way that he's looking at something with his level of EQ is very different than the way that I'm looking at something. His way of observing is very different than the way I'm observing. He's listening, but I'm watching.
Ooh, say it again, girl. Ooh.
And what's coming out of someone's mouth is not always
Jesus.
consistent with their demeanor or sort of the vibe that they're giving off, which is more spiritual than EQ, I would argue. But also sort of the nuances. If they're having a conversation with a group of people, he may not notice that someone says something and then looks at their friend like, ha, 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 or what have you. I'll notice everything, And so, again, identifying how your particular level of EQ works for whatever you're doing. Maybe you're an attorney, maybe you're a nurse, maybe you're a doctor, maybe you're a businessman, maybe you're a CEO or businesswoman, maybe you're, an entrepreneur, an owner of your own business, a restaurateur, like whatever that thing is, you will hone certain skills for you to be able to excel in your workspace as well.
That's so powerful. And I think there are moments in which it works for both of us, right? And that's so powerful. Like I listen well. She watches well. And in moments like she's just described, it works well. At times in which, the listener is the most important thing versus the watcher, because for her sometimes it's like she'll say that just don't look right there, and I'm like, no, give it a chance. And I'll say, let the person tell their story. And when the story comes out, she's like, wow, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I had no idea,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, so sometimes that's a great counterbalance of that. So it's not judging based upon previous experience, giving each experience its own space to either fail you or surprise you. And I think that's the important. And I think that's the cool thing. Like when you're dating somebody, when you marry somebody, understanding why God brought you together.
Yeah.
You balance each other out, right? And we do a good job of that, because I'm gonna tell you, this girl don't miss nothing. And I don't either. I hear well. I listen. I think that's what my gift is. I hear God. I hear what people are saying. I pay attention. And her gift is, boy, she can see a gnat in a nappy head.
Well, and it's so interesting because people always say, oh, she's so quiet and she doesn't really speak. Yeah, no, it's that I am extraordinarily observant.
Yeah.
I will walk into a room and I don't have to be the loudest person. I don't have to be the loudest voice. I don't have to be the one that asks questions 20 times, the same questions, or the one that repeats the same thing that someone else just said 10 times so that I can be heard. I speak when it's necessary. I say what hasn't been said, but I also am sitting there observing the entire room to make sure that what needs to come out of that situation does come out of that situation.
I had a situation, names are not important. We were having something for my anniversary The ministers had put it together. It was so powerful. It was a reception, and
Oh, yeah.
one of the ministers'
Mhm.
um, daughter had come and stood looking for her mother. I think she was ready to go. She might have been sitting in the car the whole time. And I was being pulled to take pictures. And they were calling me to take
Mhm.
pictures. And I
Mhm.
saw the daughter stand there with the mask on. And I saw the mother leave. And she was heading out to get in the car. I asked one of my associate pastors, I said, I noticed the daughter, she didn't really come in to be a part. And when he began to tell me the story, that the mother had been battling cancer and that the daughter had been battling cancer longer than the mother, right? And so they were calling her, Bishop, come take a picture. And I went right outside in the parking lot, called her name, and I went to the car and I just grabbed the daughter by the hand and grabbed the mother by the hand. And I said, first, I want to thank you for coming tonight and to celebrate my anniversary, but I want you to know that your pastor has not lost sight of what you're dealing with. And I just want you to know that you have a family, a community here, a village that's praying for you. And I looked at her daughter. I said, I know this has to be extraordinarily tough for you watching your mom go through this, and you've been through this since you were a child, cancer, just dealing with this whole process. And she just lost it. She broke down and she looked at me, lip was quivering, and she said, I resented you. I was mad at you. I was mad at God. Why would this happen to me as a child? And I saw her release it, and I saw a powerful moment of reconciliation, and I saw, her be restored back to her relationship with God and her pastor. She wasn't resenting me because I had done something wrong. I represented God. And imagine had my EQ been this picture was more
Mhm.
important than me being sensitive to her leaving out without actually engage. I noticed not her just coming in, I noticed her being disengaged from it. And
Mhm.
that's what triggered me
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
say, I need to find out what your story is. And
Mhm.
there would be people who would say, why you don't go following this, girl out to
Mhm.
the parking lot. You don't know.
Mhm.
And I'm like, but my heart. And
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
saw this mother and daughter that we prayed in that parking
Yeah.
lot. It was
Yeah.
such a powerful moment. And it just really helps you understand that there are these moments. And I thought about, for example, Jesus gives us these marvelous
Yeah.
examples of
Yeah.
EQ,
Mhm.
right? You see the woman at the well, and
Mhm.
Jesus stops and sits with her, and
Mhm.
everything says he shouldn't do it.
Yep.
She's a Samaritan woman. Jews don't
Mhm.
intermingle with Samaritans. She's a woman, and and the disciples don't get it. They
Mhm.
don't get it.
Mhm.
And you think about the woman with the issue of blood.
Mhm.
Somebody touched me. Like you think
Mhm.
about, the lepers who were healed, the one who cried on the side of the road, have mercy on us. And the level of sensitivity is
Yeah.
what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
What I do every day
Yeah.
requires a level of sensitivity that allows you to have empathy, which is a part of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And if you ever lose empathy,
Mhm.
then you're never going to be successful, because I want to feel, I want to be connected to people's
Mhm.
journey and pain and know that their
Mhm.
story is what I've been called to be a part of.
Which is
Yeah.
another reason why we say connection is the new
Is the
currency.
new currency.
Being able to connect with people on various levels is important.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
I've seen you do it too. I've
Mhm.
seen you say, I need to reach out to so and so. You've
Mhm.
grabbed somebody by the hand that was
Yeah.
talking to me and says, what's your information? And call me. And
Mhm.
you've done just that
Mhm.
little tap on the
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah.
And I've seen the person just break down in
Yeah.
your presence, like,
And we
yeah,
say all the
yeah.
time, like, no one cares what you're selling until they know that you care.
Oh, God.
And so, even if you're not in sales, whatever you're doing, that's what you're selling.
Yeah.
Whether you're selling yourself as a physician, you're selling yourself as a nurse, you're selling yourself as a good attorney, you're
Yeah.
selling yourself as a real estate agent. Like, if people don't know that you actually care about who they are, what they're going through, and that this is not just something that's transactional, but
Yeah.
is that you care about them and their life and their family, whatever. I mean, people will go to the moon for you once they know that you genuinely care. And that's another thing about being, having emotional intelligence, being able to decipher those people who actually do care versus those people who just want something from you.
People ask me all the time, what's the secret to the growth of Mount Zion? why does Mount Zion continue to thrive post-pandemic and continues to do what it does, and
You've
I
heard that a
thank
lot.
God. Yeah, I heard it a lot. And people often want to know, what's the strategy of church growth? What are you doing with your staff and your team? But let me tell you something. And I think this is transferable, not just to church.
Yeah.
It's transferable to your organization.
Life.
If you want success, you want sustainability, you want to see growth and engagement,
Yeah.
it comes from an authentic
Yes.
and intentional effort to be connected to people and to flat out care.
Yes.
To take a moment
Yeah.
to look a person in the eye. That 15 seconds, and you teach me this,
Yeah.
can feel like 15 minutes.
Yeah, even if you feel like you don't have time, even if you're racing to get to the next meeting, you pause, you look the person in the eye, you ask them their name, ask them how they're doing, make sure they're okay. You don't have 20 minutes, but being able to engage with someone as if they're the only person on earth, even if it's just for a few seconds, studies have shown that can be life-changing for people.
And when you create that culture, then people feel comfortable approaching you.
Yeah.
We just had it happen just the other week.
Yeah.
We were out eating, and on numerous occasions, it was the children, right?
Yeah.
They walked up, want to hug us, faster, whatever. And I think we are cognizant of the fact that people have a perception because, I pastor a large church that it's hard to get to him. He's probably got security around town.
Yeah.
But when you're relational, when you shake hands and you let people know you're praying for them, you really do care. You follow up.
Yeah.
It creates a culture where people know, as you say, that you care. And I think that's really where it is in any capacity. And I think that's how you can be successful. Never lose sight of that. I never will lose sight of that. That's what I am called to be, a pastor, a caregiver. And that's what you do. You genuinely care, but not standoffish. It may look that way with her because she's just watching. And I am the one that's listening. But please understand, when you know who we are, you realize this is what they're doing. She's watching out for him while he's talking. She's paying attention. So, and he's listening while she's watching. And that's how it works. And I think that's one of the keys that can be incredibly helpful as you're trying to be successful, as you're trying to navigate emotional intelligence. I think it's so important. And, we've learned this, that part of social skills matter, right? Because how we engage in that is huge, right? We've learned, we always talk about now, based on what we've gone through, our circle has become a period. Right?
But that's important though, and that's
yeah.
okay, right?
Yeah.
Because you understand how people perceive you, you understand where, what situations and environments are safe in terms of being able to share
That's the
and
key
be
word.
your authentic self. And having emotional intelligence is a no judgment zone.
Period.
Right? It's not about feeling better than or looking down on someone for being able to pick up on their nuances or their emotions. It's just about figuring out or being able to meet people, like he said earlier, where they are, and being able to then pivot or decide in that moment, in that split second, how you will then interact with that person. Or if it's a long-term relationship, whether it's at work or business or what have you, then being able to understand how to deal with that person on a regular basis and sort of what boundaries or parameters to put in place in order for you to have successful relationships with those individuals.
Yeah. So, as you hear this today, and you hear part one, you go back, and if you're watching this one, go back to part one. I promise you that part one is going to bless you. We want to come on part two and give you more practical examples.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we know many of you have been asking, well, what about this? Or what about that? Have I been in situations like this? And I think what we talk about is transferable every single day. And we're wired this way for a reason. And I think that's something powerful in how God wired us. The Bible says we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And sometimes we just think that just means we look good. No, it means that God intentionally wired us for the relationships He intends for us to connect.
In terms of how you think, how you operate, how you communicate.
And you realize, wow, I know there's only one person anointed to be with me. Who's you've been wired for me.
Right.
No,
and He's been wired for me. Hey!
Yeah, it's been a blessing. No, we'll talk. No, but that's how we do. I think that's what it's important, right? To understand that's how God works. And may God give you and your relationships, the same grace he's given to us, to be wired for the people in our lives, right?
Exactly.
So, thank y'all for tuning in today. I hope it's been a blessing. We've enjoyed this one. Man, emotional intelligence, part 1 and part 2. It's been on and popping.
On and popping.
I promise I'm going to end this with a joke like I did part 1, all right? I'm Bishop.
And I'm Dr. Steph.
Peace out.